We'll have a minor delay this evening. Commissioner Simmons is experiencing technical difficulties.
I'm back.
You good? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Monday, April 4th, West Fargo City Commission meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and please join me in a pledge of allegiance. Thank you. This evening, Commissioner Jurdevig is not with us. He's has a business appointment that he could not avoid, so he's not with us this evening. First order of business is item C, is to approve the order of the agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is the approval of the minutes of March 21st, 2022. They have been distributed. They are in the packet, and they are in pages 3 through 5.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of March 21st, 2022 as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is the approval of the minutes. Oh, we just did that. Excuse me. Building permits, pages 6 through 7, they have been distributed.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits as distributed, pages 6 through 7. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have items A through C, bills starting on page 8, and a right-of-way permits deemed open and awaiting restoration are pages through 30. So we have 3 items on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as distributed and presented to the commission. Items A through C. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is the regular agenda. Item number 1 is an annual review and reapproval of neighborhood revitalization program. This will be presented by Aaron Nelson, the Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of West Fargo. Good evening, Mr. Nelson. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commission President and Commissioners. So item number 1 is a request to reapprove the city's neighborhood revitalization program for the 2022 calendar year. This program is a partnership between the City of West Fargo and Gate City Bank, which provides low-interest loans and technical assistance for major home improvements to existing homes. The program is specifically geared to incentivize reinvestment into the city's oldest existing housing stock located north of I-94. Since its inception in 2019, the program has included 13 projects totaling over $280,000 in residential reinvestment. The program aligns with the city's comprehensive plan, specifically in relation to strengthening and investing in older neighborhoods. And so with that quick introduction, I would like to hand things over to Brandy Haugen with Gate City Bank to provide a few more details in regards to this program.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Good evening and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us. I have Josh, who's handing out the flyer for the program for 2022. That just lays out the details of the program. Just want to thank you again for having us, and just wanted to open up for any questions to see if you've got any concerns or any questions for us.
Commissioners, any questions?
It looks like you've been doing some good projects here.
Yes.
Maybe 19 of them or so.
Yeah, so I know last year, due to the rates on the mortgage lending side, we saw a lot more customers that were just wanting to refinance their first mortgages, just to take advantage of those lower interest rates. So the number of loans we did last year were just a little bit lower than they normally would be due to that refinance market. But with rates adjusting in 2022, we definitely anticipate the number of loans going up this next year. And just with the, the current markets of being able to get materials and hiring contractors was a little bit more challenging in the previous year. So hopefully we see that improve over this next year. So, but yes, I know, Josh, you received a lot of inquiries, and Malachi was partnered with us, and I know we've had a lot of buzz around the program over the last few years. So it's really great. So hoping we can increase that again this next year.
It's a great program for the community, and we're very grateful for Gate City Bank and their efforts to assist our citizens and our taxpayers with these types of programs. So
Yes,
thank you.
and we love partnering with you guys. Great. It's so awesome to work with the city of West Fargo. We've had nothing but great experiences, and so hoping we can continue that for many, many, many years. So
Very good. Thank you so very much.
you're welcome. Can we take a photo today? We've got
Commissioners, would you join?
A-
me? No problem.
giant check we would like to present to you. Are you taking photos? Could you take some photos too? And then could you take one for us? Yeah, are the best. Thank you.
Where's Kevin? I hope, the president will be here with us.
He's asked me to hold down the fort for him today.
All right, let's see. Commissioner Simmons, do you want to come on? I guess no, we better keep 2 and 2, but can you guys just move a little closer, maybe turn to the side a little bit? All right, and then a couple on,
Can you even open it up again?
nope, it's
Okay.
good.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is for you guys. There you go.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
So, thank you, Brandy, and with that, the requested action tonight is just to approve staff's partnership with Gates, or to continue to work with Gate City Bank on this program. So, certainly happy to answer any questions you have for staff on that.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Nelson? Commissioner Simmons?
Well, thank you. Obviously, this is a great program. You've been doing this for many, many years. I think since, I don't remember you not doing it, so.
19, yes.
2019?
Yeah.
Okay, is that when this, wow, time goes by. I mean, holy crap, I think it went on forever, so this is a great deal. So this is not a derogatory statement or anything, but I am concerned that the staff has changed the rules a little bit in reference to the utility bills. So I don't quite understand if, because in the past, you had to be current on utility bills, and then you could qualify for this loan, correct?
I believe that's correct.
And now you want to take that out of there. Is that correct?
That is a proposal, yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question is if folks aren't, no, again, no offense, this program is great, we need it, there's no question, but if they're not paying their utility bills, how can we expect them to pay the interest to the bank? So that is a concern that I have
Yeah.
in
And
this
I-
process. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I want to be so positive about this program because it's a great program, but if they can't make their utility bills, how are they going to pay you folks back? And another question would be, as we're talking about this in the years, have there been many defaults on these loans?
We've had no defaults.
So that's fantastic. But again, I'm just concerned that with that portion, I know it's new. I don't know that that's something I like, I guess, in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't say a lot to people that are working hard and paying their bills and want to do these loans. And they're all working hard, I get that, but I'm just saying, if they can't pay the utility bills, how do we expect them to pay an interest rate on a mortgage, on a loan?
And just to respond to that quickly, the intent is really just to decouple those two requirements. Gate City certainly will do their due diligence as far as the loan is concerned, which is really independent from anything in relation to bills on the city's end of things. And so they are kind of independent requirements, I guess, and that's just the sole intent there. And so just a suggestion, if you want to add that back in, staff would have no issue with that.
So I guess I could ask this, I mean, has that been a problem with people applying for these loans? Is that an issue that you've seen come up?
I'll maybe defer to Gate City on that as far as the ability to repay loans is concerned. The city
Well,
really
as
has.
far as, have people been applying for this, has that been an issue that they haven't been current on the utility bills? I mean, is there any correlation between the two that we've seen that where this even needs to be in there?
Not that I'm aware of, but I haven't gone back and looked at previous years.
I was gonna say, Malachi has not brought no concerns to us. We haven't had any issues, and definitely we would work with you if there was some concerns on it, but
So I'm sorry, Mayor,
Please.
thank you. So at the end of the day, though, you approve the loan.
yeah.
And if they're behind on the utility bills, that's your decision to take the risk, not,
Yeah, so we look at credit, make sure that they qualify, make sure
come in
there's
their
no
credit rating.
delinquent payments or anything.
okay, so I'm fine with this. Again, I don't want to make this at all, I'll support this. I wanted to be aware of that it's kind of an odd deal, that's all, that would be in there, but, okay.
Additional questions for Mr. Nelson or Gate City Bank?
Well, because Commissioner Simmons brought that up, have you had to turn anybody away because they were not current on their utility bills? That's why we're adding that?
We've not turned away anyone on their utility bills, no.
Okay, so everybody that's come to you so far has been current on their utility bills?
Yep.
Okay. I was just curious why if people were being turned away because of that, that's why we're adding that in there.
Nope,
Okay.
concerns.
Okay, this is an actionable item that we were going for the reapproval. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second?
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded for the reapproval of the Neighborhood Revitalization Program as presented by Gate City Bank this evening. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Gate City Bank.
Thank you.
Appreciate the partnership very much. Item number 2 is a 5-year pilot incentive for Paisley and Dash LLC. Aaron Nelson, Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of West Fargo, will be presenting. It's on pages 36 through 43 in the packet.
All right, thank you. So I'll maybe just start with a brief bit of background on the pilot incentive or the payment in lieu of taxes program. So this is a program, it's a development incentive that uses abatement of taxes to attract private investment that meets development goals of the city. Recipients of the pilot incentive pay $100 per year on top of pre-existing taxes in lieu of paying full property taxes on the improved value of for the property tax for the term of the incentive program, which in the case for tonight would be a 5-year term limit. At the end of the 5-year incentive period, the owner would pay full taxes on the improvements to the property. So that's kind of what the pilot program is all about. And so before you tonight is a request for approval of a 5-year pilot incentive for Paisley and Dash LLC, which is an e-commerce bakery currently operating out of a rental kitchen in Fargo. Paisley and Dash specializes in the manufacture and online sale of baked goods to a national market and is certified by the state as a primary sector business. The applicant is proposing to relocate the business to 3319 Oak Ridge Pond Way East in West Fargo, which would result in an estimated $450,000 in new construction value, as well as the creation of 3 full-time and 7 part-time jobs by the end of the 5-year incentive. The annual incentive to the applicant would equate to about $6,955 per year, which would be a total of about $34,776 at the end of the 5-year incentive period. At that time, the city would collect the full assessed property tax for that property. The application was reviewed and recommended for approval by the city's Economic Development Advisory Committee at their March meeting. And in accordance with the North Dakota Century Code, notice to potential competitors has been published for a public hearing to take place tonight prior to action being taken on this request. And so the recommended action tonight is to open and hold a public hearing and then approve or deny the requested incentive. The owner, Sarah Lean, is present should you have any questions about the specifics of the business itself. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Nelson?
I
Commissioner George?
just have a comment. For me, I'm a big supporter of small businesses, so when we use incentives, I do like to support the small businesses. This is a relatively small incentive. The applicant has also indicated that, but for this incentive, that she probably couldn't or wouldn't move here. So for me, that's very important too. So I think again, this is a great use of what we want to be using this type of incentive program for.
Thank you, Commissioner. Additional comments, questions? We're going to close the regular agenda. We're going to go into a public hearing. At this time, is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue with regard to a 5-year pilot incentive for Paisley and Dash LLC? Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. We move back into the regular agenda. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the 5-year pilot incentive for Paisley and Dash LLC as presented by Mr. Nelson of Planning and Zoning. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. To the owner, Sarah, is it? Thank you for coming in. John, thank you for being, John from the EDC is also with her. So thank you very much. Congratulations. Welcome to West Fargo. Item 3 is the City of West Fargo Fire Department 2021 Annual Report. We call on Chief Dan Fuller, Fire Chief for the City of West Fargo. This is in pages 44 through 78 of your packets. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Commission President Dardis, members of the Commission. This is a presentation for the 2021 Annual Report. It gives me great pleasure to submit this report to you. This past year has been challenging to provide professional fire and emergency services to our community in the midst of an ongoing pandemic. We've had to adapt, make changes on the fly, and adopt new policies as we go forward to make sure that both our workforce and our community are kept safe. Every year, the department sees our call volumes rise, and it goes past all of our previous benchmarks, and this last year was no different. The department responded to 2,539 calls for service. And to compare 5 years ago, the department responded to only 369 calls for service. I fully expect our call volumes to match those of the Fargo and Moorhead cities. Roughly 105 calls per 10,000 people in the city. We should be about 4,000 in the next 2 or 3 years. We foresee it to plateau at that point, we hope, and then just keep growing as the communities grow. But we have a little catching up to do. In 2021, we made great strides making sure that our fire headquarters project has come to realization. The completion of this project will reduce response times in critical areas near the core part of West Fargo and improve reliability measures citywide Through a collaborative process that involved in meetings with the department staff, city administration, and city commission, a design has been completed and bids have been prepared and approved, and contracts are going out, and ground should be broken pretty soon here. Throughout 2021, we also accomplished several important benchmarks and objectives. We designed and ordered 2 replacement fire apparatus, and we were awarded an $840,000 grant between the 2 pieces of apparatus from the state, and that paid for half of each truck. We had no recorded fire deaths in the city of West Fargo. We completed 52 arson investigations in West Fargo, the FM metro area, and the surrounding areas into Minnesota and eastern North Dakota. We proactively reduced call volume and addressed the most vulnerable in our community through the use of risk reduction home visits to frequent callers of our 911 system. We added a new heart screening to our annual department medical exam to identify and treat underlying cardiovascular issues in firefighters before we have an on-duty incident. And we standardized the fireground rehab policy to include our occupational health practitioners, our city safety team, and the Fargo and Moorhead fire departments. It has been my privilege to lead the department through this past year, and I'm hopeful for the future as we continue to improve and meet the needs and expectations of our community. With the dedication of all of our staff, from our firefighters, EMTs, to our risk reduction staff, emergency management staff, equipment services, and command staff, I'm confident the department is well prepared to continue our tradition of service throughout the coming years. On the board there is a slide of calls in review. Again, 2,539 calls for service. We had 239 callbacks during the year. That was when we were at no staffing and we had to call back off-duty or on-call firefighters. And 266 times we had more than one call running at once. There were 3,640 total unit responses, and we were at 61.9 calls per 10,000 residents. And again, we expect that to level out about 105 per 10,000 residents. You can see the breakdown of call volume there. 54% were 55% were emergency medical calls for service. The rest were rescue, hazmat, structure fires, miscellaneous fires, alarms, good intention calls. And we also put in the calls by month going through 2021 and then the first 3 for 2022. Award recipients, we always like to point this out, the good work that we've done in the past year. Firefighter Ken Miller, firefighter David Babb was awarded the Life-Saving Award for saving a woman's life who had a sudden cardiac arrest in her driveway in the southern part of the city. They arrived on scene, initiated basic life support measures while the ambulance arrived from Sanford, and they started advanced life support measures, and the woman was we were able to get a return of spontaneous circulation, and she was able to leave the hospital with no neurological deficits, which is a great win. Accommodation Awards, Captain Jason Caravue, firefighter Garrett Ricks, while responding to a car accident on I-94, came across a separate car accident on Veterans involving an ambulance that was transporting a patient from South Dakota on a ventilator. They had to extricate the patient and the crew from the ambulance and treat and transport all of them. And they had to do it alone because the rest of our trucks were down on I-94 on different accidents. Captain Brandon Gogler, Captain Mike Obach, and Emergency Manager Pierre Freeman were our instrumental people involved in getting our COVID testing set up in 2020, or 2021. We did 1,450 tests in 30 days through a drive-through system at the Lights parking garage, if everyone remembers that. The Stork Award, myself and firefighter Kellen Jorgensen, we delivered twins out of hospital in November of that year. And then Meritorious Service Award, Joey Porter, one of our battalion chiefs, and Tucker Buchholz was one of our firefighters at the time. Tucker was actually off duty and working his primary job, which is for city public works. Structure fire call came in early morning. They responded. Tucker happened to be down the street. The two of them, plus a West Fargo police officer, pulled 3 people out of the duplex that was burning. That duplex actually was in Fargo's territory. And it was just over our city line. Dispatch sent both of us because they didn't know who owned it. So both departments responded, worked flawlessly, ended up being a double fatality fire anyways, but we did save 3 additional people from that fire. And then our firefighter of the year was Captain Bryce Ellickson. He's stepped up and had to lead 2 crews at our South Fire Station when we had a change in leadership down there. put in over 513 hours of service to the community while working a full-time job, over 40 hours a week. And then our Chiefs coin, the only Chiefs coin we gave out for the year was for Terry Stife, police sergeant, when he retired from the police department. He was a great supporter of our department, and we really was sad to see him retire. Again, 266 calls, or 2 or more at once, 61.9 per 10,000 residents. And this just gives a breakdown of where they occurred by planning zone. Obviously, planning zone 1 was the area that we had the most call volume, and that is the area where we were building the new fire headquarters, and we'll have fire companies staffed full-time next year. Planning zone 2 and planning zone 3 were just behind that. 4, 5, and 6 are, 5 and 6 are north of town, 4 is way down by the wilds. We are noticing that planning zone 4 is upticking in call volume as the population increases near the Legacy School, south of 38th Avenue. We had 3 on-duty firefighter injuries, none of them serious last year. We did have 1 civilian fire injury. A woman was burned during a structure fire, and it just so happened that structure fire occurred when we were already on a structure fire. So the Fargo Fire Department responded with 2 engines, a ladder, and a battalion chief, and we broke free 1 truck from way down south and came all the way up, actually just over here in the trailer court. But she recovered from her burns, and we were able to keep that fire to her kitchen. No fire deaths. Fires and fire loss, we had 48 fires within the city. 11 of those were building fires, and it's on another slide in here, but we were just over $1 million in fire loss last year, which was up percentage-wise from just over 1% to just under 10%. So we did have an increase in fire loss last year. Our community outreach group through risk reduction has done over 6,000 community interactions. You know, we've been having them keep track of it. They're out there in the public all the time, doing all the events within the city, making sure that we can reduce risk and reduce harm before something bad happens. And they've been doing tremendous work. And that is one of the reasons why we are so successful with such a skeleton crew, is really because of the risk reduction efforts that we've done. Our Citizens Fire Academy, we started that last year, took a pilot program. It worked very, very well. The next one here starts May 4th. Applications are due the 22nd April, in case anyone wants to join us. Community risk reduction, again, over 6,000 contacts with the public, 24 car seat installations, 78 public events, and we ranged all the way from school children to the elderly in our community, and every place in between, workplaces, schools, civic organizations. We've really been, really beating the bushes hard with getting the word out about risk reduction, and I think it's helped us quite a bit. Again, our K-9 team did 52 deployments. 32 of them were structure fires, 9 were outside vegetation fires, and 2 were miscellaneous calls. And between John and Micah, they put in 332 hours of training last year. Our Joint Recruit Academy with Fargo produced 4 West Fargo graduates. We currently have 1 ongoing right now, a Joint Recruit Academy with 3 firefighters in it. We're planning one for this summer with another 2, and then this fall, we'll see where we end up with hires by the fall into January. But it's working out great. It's absolutely awesome that we're able to do this, and we have the staff, our training staff and their training staff. Fires like this one this past weekend worked flawlessly, hand in hand between the 2 departments. We put in over 10,000 hours of training last year, and the training numbers are broken down there, and you'll notice that fire training was about 50%. That's our, it's maybe a low frequency for building fires in this town, but it is the highest risk that we face as a fire department, so we make sure that we train for that. Code enforcement did 1,232 inspections, and this is a breakdown of the actual fires in town. 11 building fires, 6 cooking fires, 3 trash fires in buildings, 18 outside fires, 10 car fires, just over $1 million in fire loss. And with that, I will stand for any questions or comments on the annual report. There's a whole lot more data in there. I'd encourage the public to go and look at it. We got very, very granular with our response time data and going through each planning zone and what our hazards are.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Commissioners? Questions of the chief? Questions, comments?
Outstanding work.
That's how I'll make my comment. Chief, great job. I mean, you pretty much give us everything we need every single time to make our decisions, so that's huge. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And a great display.
Well, it's definitely our firefighters here in town. They're doing the work and they're putting in the hard time here. It's, all the credit goes to them, not me. But thank you.
Well, please give it to them.
Absolutely, I sure will. I always do.
Yep.
I would encourage the public to go through the annual report because the logistics of what the fire department does with the 6 different planning zones that we have and how accurately and specifically they track the delivery time of services to any given fire really provides us as commissioners amazing data to work with as to what we have to do to continue to maintain that, not only from the fire perspective, but because we are often the first responders there for the health and safety of some of our taxpayers. And it's amazing when you take a look at the dynamics of how many fire calls or how many calls for services with regard to health related. And the data is very, very effective and extremely well done. So congratulations, Chief, to you and all your firefighter teams. We're a grateful community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 4 on our agenda is a traffic signal update citywide by Mr. Dustin Scott, City of Engineer for the City of West Fargo. It is approved on pages 79 and 80 through 81 on your agenda. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. I'm actually going to turn this over to our Assistant City Engineer, Andrew Rucky.
Good evening, Mr. Rucky. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President and Commissioners. Just a request to put up 10 new signal, or upgrade 10 signal areas, mostly on the Veterans and 9th Corridor and Main Avenue. These are the detection cameras. We currently have functioning cameras at these locations. They're getting older, they're requiring more maintenance. These new cameras work better, they detect better, they allow for better operations and will last several more years. It is a $271,000, I don't remember the exact number, $271,000 roughly request. The vendor we do work with is the only vendor that sells this equipment within the metro area. Both Fargo and Moorhead work with this vendor. This vendor is the sole source for this equipment. I can take any questions.
Explain, Mr. Rucky and I met earlier this week, and he explained it to me. Explain why the cameras are at the intersections that they are, Mr. Rucky. For the public, please.
These cameras we are requesting new ones for, there are 3 different types of cameras in use in this city. 2 of them are between 10 and 15-year-old equipment. The new stuff is about 3 to 4 years old. It's a big upgrade in picture quality, in detection ability. To make maintenance easier for our Public Works Department, so they only have to carry a single type of camera. I'm requesting this so that we are now fully citywide on this new style of camera.
Why the cameras, though? Explain to the public the use of why the cameras.
What are you detecting?
Yes, these are the cameras that detect traffic. So they're the ones that tell signals to switch over and say, there's a car here, we need to go into the left turn lane or the through lane. It works better, they're a lot higher quality. Think about it as you're upgrading your digital camera from 10 years ago to a modern one.
The purpose of this, obviously, as Mr. Rucky has said, is that this helps determine the traffic flow as to when the lights will change and the like. And one of the things that all of us as commissioners have heard over the years is as we continue to have growth in certain neighborhoods, that why is the light this many minutes long and the left turns only this much or the right turns only this much? This is a key part of that dynamic as to how we move the traffic through our community during drive times or even when traffic is light, because then obviously your larger arterial roads will be longer green. So this is a critical part of the infrastructure that we have in order to move our traffic and to keep our citizens, mobile. Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. Looking at on page 80 of the agenda, you list all the different locations where they're going to be placed at. And the first one that's listed there is at Cheyenne and Maine, and that one is roughly $6,000 cheaper than the rest of them. And I noticed it's a 3 autoscope vision, and all the rest are 4 autoscope visions. If you can give me a layman's reason why, is it just because there's a T there?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, it's literally because there's no north direction.
just wanted to make sure, that's why we're getting a little break on that one versus, getting,
When boat,
Taking it to the cleaners then.
when boat traffic increases on the Cheyenne River, we'll put one there.
okay. We get the river walk going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I was just curious, I wanted to make sure that's why.
Any additional questions, Mr. Rucky? Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Olson, second. We have a motion to approve authorizing the traffic signal upgrades as presented by Mr. Rucky and Mr. Scott. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5 is a resolution authorizing the issuance of public safety annual appropriation bonds, Fire Department Headquarters, Series 2022. We have Sarah from the Onstead Twitchell Law Firm is who I have listed for that. Or Mr. Shockley, but obviously Mr. Shockley's not here this evening.
Thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. Yes, this is a parameters resolution to authorize the issuance of the appropriation bonds for the Fire Department headquarters. If you turn on page 84, it says this resolution will authorize up to an amount not to exceed $10,500,000 at a net interest cost will not exceed 4%. I believe the fire station is estimated to be around $17 million. This appropriation bond will have to be, or an amount will have to be appropriated each year by the commission during budgeting to pay for this bond.
Questions? Commissioners, anyone?
Make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. We have a motion. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Simmons. Been moved and seconded to approve the issuance of public safety annual appropriation bonds for the Fire Department Headquarters, Series 2022. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is a forestry ordinance revision request. Tina Fisk, City Administrator of the City of West Fargo. The pages are 109 through 133 in the packet. Good evening, Mrs. Fisk.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. It was probably 2 or 3 meetings ago that Mr. Staglin presented to you and discussed changes that he would like to see with our forestry ordinance in relation to nuisance trees. I was directed to work with our city attorney to review all this documentation and come back with a recommendation to you as a commission on whether to make changes to the ordinance or not. Through review and discussion, my recommendation to you as a commission is to not make the change to the city ordinance. At this point, we have very specific lists of nuisance trees, and to make this change would open the city up, and speaking with our attorney and so forth, would open us up to liability of having to deal with trees that are on an embankment of the river that are observed by someone to be considered a nuisance tree. Therefore, we would have to, as a city, make the determination it's a nuisance. which could open us up for legal issues. And then if we go to remove the tree, and any damage is claimed, it's another liability issue. And generally, unless it's a disease like Dutch elm disease or emerald ash borer, we don't go on any private property unless there's overhanging trees, sidewalks and streets, we trim those. But other than that, those are the only times we would get involved in that, and that's an ordinance that you already have in place.
Questions for Mrs. Fisk?
Are you allowing some?
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you. This is just a question. Are you allowing the public to comment on this? Or?
Well, the gentleman that brought it forth for us previously is in the crowd. Mr. Stanglin is here. Commissioners?
I'm okay.
You okay
I'd
with
like
that?
to hear them just to, yeah.
All right. Sir, if you'd like to speak to this issue, obviously, Mrs. Fisk has reviewed it with our city attorney, and you heard the disposition that he brought forward, so.
Thank you.
And if we could, to keep the meeting going, if we could have about 5 minutes, if you try and limit yourself to about 5 minutes.
I will talk as quickly as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. When I first brought this issue to the attention of the City Commission, I felt it was necessary, logical, and plain common sense. After all, a city ordinance, or a city develops ordinances to, among other things, provide for the safety, the public safety and health, as stated in the West Fargo Home Rule Charter under Article 3. My original intent was to address problems mainly with trees along the Cheyenne River, as everyone knows, but I quickly realized that this was a citywide issue. I would like to address some of the concerns that were just mentioned that have been brought up during this debate. First is the private property issue. It has been stated that the city could not require private or property owners to remove a tree and that the city could not enter private property, and that was also just stated previously here. If that argument were true, the city would not be able to enforce ordinances that pertain to private property. The most obvious example to the fallacy of that argument is that the city does have the existing nuisance tree ordinance. That ordinance states that if a property owner has a tree that is diseased, it must be removed. If the property owner does not remove it within a set period of time, the city will enter the property and remove it, and all costs incurred will be assessed against the property. During the February 7th commission meeting, it was determined that my request would be revised, my request to revise the nuisance tree ordinance would be studied. On March 24th, I received a call to inform me that the group that was reviewing my request had decided that they would not go ahead with the recommendation for this proposal. I'm deeply disappointed that I was not allowed to participate in that discussion. It was stated that my participation would set a precedent. Is it a bad thing to include the views and ideas of citizens of West Fargo in the decision-making process? I would think that that type of precedent would be a good thing. At any rate, I was told the reasons for the decision were, one, the costs would be prohibitive to enforce the ordinance, which was just discussed a little bit, but another part of that was the insurance costs that did not get addressed just now. And the insurance costs to cover the legal issues as the lawsuits and damages. To the first, would there be an exorbitant number of people calling to report nuisance trees? Did the city need additional staff to check to see if residents were running their sump pumps into the floor drains during the summer months? Check to see if firewood is stacked 6 inches off the ground. Check to see if residents are clearing the sidewalks of snow within 24 hours. Check to see if an old vehicle in the backyard was currently licensed. Check to see if a dead tree in the backyard had died from disease. The city only investigates violations to these ordinances and many others when it is brought to their attention or a complaint is made. It would be the same for this revised ordinance. The majority of West Fargo residents would not even notice this revision. Who would notice? People that have a legitimate concern about a tree that they feel poses a threat to their property and possibly to their lives. Establishing a criteria that would be used to determine if a tree was a threat to property or life would make the decision process simple. Some of those factors would include, first and foremost, does the tree appear to be an imminent threat to property or people? Next would be an evaluation of the tree in question, and that would be the physical condition. Is it alive, healthy, or is it dead, dying, rotting? The age of the tree, are the roots exposed, or is the foundation compromised? What recourse does a person have when there is a tree near their property that poses a threat and the neighbor is not inclined to deal with it? Does that person have to wait until it falls, causing damage or possibly injury, to then litigate? This ordinance revision would give residents that really need assistance a tool to help them protect their property and their lives. To the second issue, and this has been debated a little bit. I talked with Mr. Larson today, Jim Larson, on this because I finally received the insurance policy. And with the insurance pertaining to this, I can understand an adjustment in a policy with the addition of a new facility, vehicle, etc. I cannot understand how the addition of this revision would constitute a change that the city would constitute a change. The city must already have insurance to cover the removal of diseased trees on private property. Why would removal of a tree that is deemed a nuisance by revised standards be any different in possible liable actions? The committee that reviewed my proposal must have contacted the insurance company, if they did a thorough investigation, for their opinion as to this specific issue topic. What was their reasoning or opinion for the need for additional insurance, and what would that cost be? The City of Valley City covers this nicely in one sentence in their forestry section. Quote, all trees and shrubs within the city shall be pruned or removed when such trees or shrubs constitute a hazard to life and property or harbor insects or disease which constitutes a threat to other trees or shrubs within the city. It does not appear that the City of Valley City has had undue expense and lawsuits because of this ordinance. And as a note, they have one forester part-time. If Valley City can effectively deal with their hazardous nuisance trees, I would think that West Fargo should be able to do the same. Today, I am asking the Commission to present a motion and a vote to require the city to establish criteria pertaining to the identification of nuisance trees and to revise the nuisance tree ordinance to include any tree that fits that established criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanglin. Commissioners, questions of the gentleman? Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Stanglin. So, obviously, over the last few months, this has kind of gotten more and more and more technical and more. When we originally talked about this, there was only one word that you wanted changed in the ordinance. What happened to that? Because I was in support of doing, just changing the one word. I didn't think it would, as you had mentioned to me, it'd give you a little teeth, but it wouldn't put the city at any risk. Is that still on the table, or was that gone?
Well, what transpired was that the private property aspect was brought forth to me by you, by Mr. Zander, by several people that said that, oh, well, this is private property. We cannot, we can't do anything about it. And I had Mr. Zander down to the river, had you down by the river looking at some of this stuff. And originally this did, for me anyway, it originated with the river. But of course, when a tree fell on my house, that also made me think of it. And then when you see the situation in other cities, like Valley City, where they cover the whole city, and I started thinking about, for me, this is a moot point because I don't have any more imminent threats to my property. I dealt with them with my neighbor, as you know. The one tree came down on my house and he had several others. And so with the private property issue, what transpired was, and this was brought forth at one of the meetings where it was stated that they thought I was discussing the nuisance clause. Well, in reviewing that nuisance clause, that made the most sense because that is going into private property and removing a tree that is a nuisance. And so the most logical gravitation that I did with this ordinance, which made more sense to connect it with the nuisance clause, because that would be the most economical, the easiest way to change and to make it so that it would cover the whole city. And in regards to that, it eliminates the private property issue, because if you cannot go into private, well, and not only that, but any other thing that they go to look at, for instance, if someone were to go into look at to see if there's, your firewood 6 inches off the ground, that's private property. Well, if this ordinance, if everyone's saying that you can't go in there because it's private property to move something or to check on it or whatever, then how can you enforce that ordinance or any of those ordinances that pertain to something on private property? Now, one thing that I would say, besides the nuisance clause, is that the clause that the Valley City has doesn't deal with ultimatums to remove a tree on private property. It just states the whole city. So I can't imagine having that ordinance as stated without having criteria for the trees. Otherwise, I mean, they more than just saying that if it's a hazard. They kind of did a broad stroke, and that's where they're at with that. What I'm stating is more specific. I'm thinking it's needed. I think a criteria, if it is established that they would change, if you would decide to change this, I think that a criteria for the forestry department to use is necessary.
Okay, so now that I heard that, I'm still curious about the original award, but having you said that, this is the next question we have to ask, and that's our city attorney, because I think that changes the prospect of us putting us more at risk when we change the entire ordinance with the criteria. Is that the concern that we have as a staff, that we're putting ourselves much more out there at risk?
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe I was not involved in these discussions, so Tina can correct me
Okay, that's fine.
if I'm wrong. I don't believe that the discussion was that you can't do it. This would just add another layer to the nuisance, that nuisance ordinance that's already in place that does allow you eventually, after certain steps are followed, to go into private property. But every time you do that, you do put the city at risk for, anything that could happen while you're there. And I believe that was sort of the underlying. It's basically, do you want to add that as another possibility? It's not that you can't.
Well, I know living on the river myself, even the Corps has to send us information. We have to agree even for them to come onto our property. So I definitely see where there could be lawsuit issues. But again, as Mr. Stanglin said, that's probably everywhere in life right now. There's lawsuits, risk. So, and Tina, yeah, please maybe explain it more. I'm just more concerned with the one word. I'm thinking that at that time it was so easy just to change the one word.
The word was shall.
Yeah, the word was shall. To me, that just seemed just so easy to do with no, and all of a sudden this ballooned into this huge hole.
But it came right back to the private property part. And even with the shall, or one word, the argument was the private property.
Right, but that, you had told me at the time, that word would be enough to give you a little bit of teeth, remember, to do, because this, in reality, this is still all civil. To me, it's a civil issue. A tree falls on your house, that's a civil issue. I don't think it's a city issue.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I'll revert back to that the West Fargo Home Rule Charter, and provide for the public's health and safety. Now, ordinances are designed for that, and so what do you say to that person who, for instance, me, if I had that tree that was hanging over my house, and I talked to my neighbor and he agreed to remove it, although it was 7 days too late before he got to it, but 5 days after the tree fell on my house, he had the rest of the trees taken care of. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Stangen. Mrs. Fisk had something that you wanted to add.
Yes, thank you, President Dardis. Something that Commissioner Simmons had said is part of the basis behind all of this. This is a civil issue, and the city can't always step in and change our ordinances to negate people having to deal with their neighbors. The Dutch elm disease, the ash borer bug, whatever it is, disease, those are things that can wipe out an entire population of trees. That's why the city got involved. This is a person's determination that I feel that's a nuisance tree. And as I explained to him earlier today, or earlier this week, we would have to, yes, as Sarah said, choose the criteria to make it a nuisance tree. And then that property owner could say, I don't believe it's a nuisance tree, and we end up in court. And then if we take it down and something gets damaged, we end up in court, when truthfully, this is a matter between two neighbors. And at some point, we've got to determine as a city, how much do we want to get involved in disputes between two neighbors?
And I agree with that, Tina, absolutely. You know, in the past years I've been on here, we have had so many times we've done things in a neighbor's yard for one reason or another, and it's that old put it back to the same as it was, and they're never it's very seldom we ever make them happy. That's the concern, Mr. Stanglin, we have, in my eyes, is doing that. I am in support of changing that one word. I think that would be fine if it would help, but at the end of the day, to me, it is a civil, and the judge should determine who's going to pay for it. I just don't know that the taxpayers should jump into that. I mean, I'm more than willing to work with that word. I think, to me at the time, that made a lot of sense. It was simple and easy to do. Turn it to shall and then give you a little bit more teeth, but I mean, I don't know what the other, I don't know enough about this whole deal. When our city attorney says it's not a good deal, I don't know enough to go against them. That's all I'm saying to you.
well, I think what the city attorney said is that it could be added to that, although you would have more opportunity for litigation, is what I'm assuming is what she's meant. Is that correct?
All I can tell you is what John Shockley, he went through all the documents, all of your information, reviewed it all, and our discussion was that he felt that we were opening up a liability for the city of West Fargo.
Take this over.
All right. Commissioners, any other?
Could I, one more thing. So what do you do when you go in to remove a diseased tree and you have someone that argues that?
We end up in court,
Same thing.
but it's very time-consuming and expensive.
And so,
But that's to save a population of trees, not just one.
okay, so in this situation, if someone was really concerned about a tree that posed a threat to their property or their lives, and we have the criteria established, and the forester comes out and agrees that tree is leaning at, 35, 40-degree angle, the foundation is deteriorating, there's rot to it, the tree is done, it's gonna go down, it's gonna go on that house. The person who owns the tree is not interested in abiding by anything. What are they supposed to do? Just let it fall and then you litigate? Or does the city want to help out, and then if there's an issue, I guess then you could litigate one way or the other, Which one does the city want to protect? I guess that would be my final.
Mr. Stangley, do you have a neighborhood, a specific tree or specific area
No, this is,
that you're dealing with here?
Nope.
This is previous
I am not a factor in if this is passed or not.
Okay, I wanted to clarify.
I have a concern that I think it is a legitimate concern.
My point being is that if you had a situation in your neighborhood that you had a concern,
Yeah.
I would guess that there's any one of 5 commissioners that sit before the city of West Fargo that would be happy to assist you in negotiation or discussions with that neighbor or neighborhood. So anything else, commissioners, Commissioner George?
So I guess I just have a comment as far as where I'm personally at. First and foremost, I really, really appreciate that you came and brought this conversation forward and brought these points forward. It's given all of us a lot to talk about and think about and discuss, and I think that's been really fantastic, and I'm glad you did that and put the time and work and effort into this. My concerns are, like our staff has been saying to us, what it could open us up for as far as litigation terms. Also, as far as I am concerned, as far as pitting neighbor against neighbor, and starting arguments, I think that's a real slippery slope, which makes me concerned. And then I also think keeping government out of people's private homes, as much as possible is a good thing. And if there is a concern, keeping it neighbor against neighbor, and keeping the city out of it as much as possible will be where I'm at on the whole thing. But I do appreciate all your work on this.
Commissioners?
I agree, we gotta keep the city out of private property issues like that are not posing a, and Mr. Stanglin, you say it's a health issue? I mean, we could be driving down any street and any bolt of lightning could come and knock down a tree. Was that a nuisance tree? No. Was that a public health issue? No. So the same thing would be, in my mind, is a tree is standing there and it could fall down someday in a windstorm. Who knew? And if the city didn't deem that as a public nuisance and then somebody else's did, then they're saying, why didn't the city come in and tell us that was a public nuisance when they did over here? We don't want to get in that position of determining which trees are deemed a nuisance to the public because it's on private land. And most of these trees are going to be in the backyards. And what public is running around in somebody's backyards, which is private? The only part that I can see as a public part is on the boulevards, which the city has the authority to go in and determine whether or not they need to come down or be trimmed or things like that. So I am totally against changing any ordinance that puts the city at more risk and more liability.
Mr. Olson, there is no comparison to your lightning striking a tree and landing on someone and a tree that's hanging over someone's property. Like, for instance, that was at mine. And, that tree was imminent in going down. I knew that tree was going to come down, and that's why I wanted it removed. And my neighbor was going to remove it. Like I said, he was 5 days short, and it came down in a wind. And just gave it that little extra push, and it came down. It's not a comparison at all. I mean, one is an act of God. The other one is
For example.
the other one you can see that it's going to go down, and there's something that you can do about it if you have some backing. That's what I'm looking for. But okay.
Your thoughts again, commissioners?
Do we need to make a
would you-
motion?
Well, Mr. Stengel had recommended a motion, but it would come from what our feelings are here, or an individual commissioner, so.
I would move that we keep the city ordinance as it is.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to leave the Forestry Department's present operations as is, and no changes to the city ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Stanglin, again, we thank you for you bringing this forward to us. I do have one request of someone from Public Works or Forestry, Mr. Zander. I would like to see the Valley City ordinance.
Thank you for your time,
In the future.
commissioners.
I'd just like to see it. Again, thank you, Mr. Stanglin. Item number 7 is contracts for the fire headquarters building. Mrs. Fisk, City Administrator, City of West Fargo. It is in pages 134 and 135 of your packets.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. Before you have a list of the various contracts that are for the fire department, the construction of the new fire department building. These were discussed and approved, not the contracts, but the bids were approved at a prior meeting. And right now, what we're requesting is for you to approve this packet of contracts contingent upon our city attorney's review and approval, as Mr. Shockley has not. They just came in, but we need to keep the process moving. He has not had time to review them all, so He will review them, and only the ones that fit all the qualifications will come forward, and I will bring you back a report at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Simmons, is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the contracts for the fire headquarters building as itemized, $15,864,824.18. Chief, you couldn't get somebody to round off 18 cents? We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8 is the city administrator's report. Mrs. Fisk, city administrator. She has an item listed as a Board of Equalization. Meeting will be held Tuesday, April 12th at 5:30 p.m. in this very room. Please, Mrs. Fisk.
Thank you very much for making that announcement. It was just more of a reminder for all of you that the Board of Equalization will convene. You are the Board of Equalization. You will convene officially next week on the 12th at 5:30. So I just wanted to make sure that you heard that and the public was reminded of the date. A couple other things I have is staff met today to review the public informational meeting that you had talked about in relation to the capital improvement project from the last meeting. And our discussion was that we felt the best format would be a town hall style format. This would include a brief presentation, and then we'd have a panel of staff, and President Dardis, if you would please join us up there to sit and answer questions that the public would have. And so we would I would encourage all commissioners to come to hear what people have to say, but this would be what we'd like to do, and we'd like to hold 2 of them. On Tuesday, April 26th, one at 12 to 1 o'clock, and one from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. That would give people optional times. If they can't make the evening one, make the lunch one. So if this doesn't work for you, I would need to know right away, because we're sending out press releases to try and get as much notification out there as possible. Do you have any concerns on the dates, the times, or the format?
Can you repeat the one at lunch, the date?
They're both at April 26th, which is a Tuesday. One is at 12 p.m. and one is at 6:30 p.m.
And that's the CIP?
That's the CIP, yep.
In this room, or where will it be?
We have not determined if it would be in the training room yet, or if it would be here. It seemed, yes.
Will those be available to watch on YouTube or Zoom if people can't make it, myself included?
I believe so, but I will have to check, and then I'll get all the information out, and the notifications will state too. We'll have it recorded.
Okay.
For sure, so that people can watch it if they missed it, but I'm not sure about the Zoom
Okay,
link.
but even just being able to watch it if you missed it. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there are no concerns, staff will continue to get that all set up. Okay. The last thing I have is to just kind of quickly throw this out. The city of West Fargo has had a number of TIF districts. We don't really have a whole bunch of them, but some of them are from quite a while ago, and 2 of them, the Butler Industrial Park and the Sterling Industrial Park, it was determined that the debt has been paid off, so both those TIF districts are closing early. And what that does is, if you notice in our book that's provided by the assessing department, which is pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie, I love that book, that the value that we had on the value of TIF that we had on the books last year was $226,146,000. With those 2 TIFs being closed and minor adjustments, we're now down at $142,274,000, and that's before they're divided, and that's the taxable value. So at any rate, I just thought it was really important for you to. I'm going to bring a report that will give you more details, but that's the power of that TIF, that we were able to close it off early. The 2 industrial parks are full, And now we have this amount of money coming back to help us, and commercial and industrial is always great. So if you have any questions for me, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Questions?
Okay, thank you.
Any correspondence, Mrs. Fisk? From you or
There was only one item, and I gave you each a copy.
shared it with us? Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any correspondence you want to share? All right, non-agenda items. At this time, I'll call on the commissioners for non-agenda items. Commissioner George.
Okay, I have 2 items tonight. The first one is the last couple of months, we've been searching for a new library director, and we've been conducting interviews. So I'm happy to say we did make an offer to Betty Adams, and she has accepted the library director position, and she'll be starting mid-May. So we're excited about that. I think she's great. The other one I wanted to talk about tonight is I had a number of residents reach out to me about the recent property assessments. And a lot of the people that reached out to me thought that their properties were probably misassessed, you know, whether it be that basements they didn't have, or bedrooms, or bathrooms, or fireplaces, older homes that maybe weren't worth the values, where their properties were going up significant amounts, you know, more than just 10 or 15%, 25, 50, even 100%. And this is an issue that I know we have the Board of Equalization meeting coming up on the 12th, but I thought it was something that was important to address tonight, talk about it as a commission. I won't be able to be at the Board of Equalization meeting, and I also invited some folks that reach out to me if they wanted to come tonight to speak, that I always support the public being able to speak if anybody would like to do that. But, you know, trying to keep it to a couple of minutes. But I thought it was important that we have that discussion as a commission at the regular meeting. So I guess I would invite any members of the public to speak if the rest of the commission would be okay with that.
Commissioner George, thank you.
I do have a question.
Please, Commissioner Olson.
Before we allow that, which I'm not against, I just want to make sure, is it okay to do this even though we're going to meet next week?
We certainly can't make any decisions this evening because we're wearing our city commission hat rather than our Board of Equalization hat. And as
I just didn't want.
foreign as that might sound, it's the same group of people. So the first thing that I would like to say, and thank you, Commissioner George, for doing this, is that I request that everyone that has an issue, and it's great that you reach out to city commissioners, but make an appointment with our assessing department. Because if there's something that's misrepresented in what they assumed that they were assessing, the number of bedrooms or the square footage or, you know, this or that or whatever, make an appointment. We have, 4 or 5 assessors, and these folks will welcome an opportunity to sit down with you one-on-one. They'll show you, they'll pull it up on their computer. I've done this because I wanted to make sure that we could speak to this in an informed manner, that the taxpayers are reassured that we would welcome any types of discussion one-on-one with these assessing people. But so if there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak to this item that Commissioner George has brought forward, yes, sir, please come in. The only thing I'd ask, if you'd state your name and address, please, for the record.
Okay, my name is Bill West. I live at 1430 Cheyenne Street.
Good evening, Bill. Good to see you.
For the last 40 years.
Yes, sir.
Almost. And without getting any specifics, the 2 gentlemen that are thumbed a ride tonight, they live on Cheyenne and River Street. I'm on Cheyenne Street. And all I'm going to say is that in the last 5 years, my property value has appreciated about 43%. 35% of it is the proposal this year and last year.
Mr. President, if I could interrupt.
Certainly.
I think we're really walking a fine line here. I understand that they just want the commission to be aware, but you are the Board of Equalization, and that meeting is, as you said, next week. I think that it's a little bit out of order for them to come and make these statements. I mean, I would encourage them to follow the process and, meet with the assessor, as you said, but as the Board of Equalization, you will meet, and at that point, you can hear from them along with the assessor and get the full picture.
I understand what the president said, And I'm just gonna say that there are a lot of people in my neighborhood that are kind of upset, and they wanna know where these figures came from, what the comps were, how can you compare a guy whose house was built in 1954 with a new house over in Charleswood, that type of thing?
Yes, sir.
People need to know.
Yep. And again, Mr. West, the important part here is that you go to the assessor. And you and Flora have lived on that house since I came to town, 40-plus years ago.
We're the
So-
second
Yes, sir.
residents, the Kracheks built it.
So the rule of thumb here is, as Sarah so adequately pointed out, we can't give you any indication of how we feel about this. Please see the professionals, and I guarantee you they will sit down and they will listen to you.
I understand. Okay. I just have one other question.
Yes, sir.
Once the person, whoever it is, states their case, asks their questions, what is the recourse? Are we all just stuck with the explanations we get?
Legal counsel, please,
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Stuck's not a legal term, but I think you know what it means.
Yes, I do. First, after, you meet with the assessor, and then the Board of Equalization meeting that they talked about next week is where you would come and have this discussion with them. They will make a decision, and then after that is where it goes to the county for final approval. So, yes,
And the other-
but in order to protest at the county, you do need to preserve that by protesting at the Board of Equalization if
The
you
other thing
disagree
that
with.
is a little bit troublesome was, I'm 74, I wasn't born yesterday. The line that says, just because your property values are going up doesn't mean your taxes are gonna be increased by a like amount. Why would they be increasing the value of the property if they weren't planning to use it to increase taxes? That's all I've got to say.
President Dardis,
Mrs. Fisk.
that line is required by North Dakota Century Code to be included in the letter. It's not a line that we are really excited about, but we have to do it. And I'm not going to get into the details of it, but our assessors can specifically explain how the whole process would work and affect or not affect total tax.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Commissioner Simmons has a point he'd like to make.
Yeah, thank you.
Questions about the mill levies.
I can go ahead, I'll wait till he's done.
About the mill levies? Okay.
If the valuation comes up, shouldn't the mill levies go down to
Please step to the microphone and state your name and address, sir, if you would, please.
Good evening, my name's Brent Mickelson, and I live at 1444 River Street. So the first question I would have for you guys is, I understand the valuations and stuff and the market's moving up. I'm a contractor myself. I understand what is going on here. But I also understand my taxes are outpacing the CPI and the cost of living index by a great amount here. So as my valuations go up, I'm interested in how the mill levies are gonna go down, because our budget shouldn't be going up 25% from last year to run the city. And some of that should be offset by the new developments and stuff going on in the new tax bases, the new tax monies, as her TIF district says, is coming off, which is new revenue to the city. So I'm wondering what we're gonna do to offset our taxes. So it's not a tax grab, just because property valuations are elevated.
Great question, Mrs. Fisk.
Yes, thank you for that question. I appreciate that. When valuations go up or down, we don't use, or especially up, we don't use it as, the terminology is a cash grab. What we do is we understand, and our commission is very careful to let us know that we can only put what we need, and that's what we do. We put what we need. We don't say, well, look, now we're going to have X more dollars for the same mill levy. Let's spend it all. The city has needs. We have a fire department that's growing exponentially, a police department that is growing, and we're trying to catch up but keep your taxes down. Now, that being said, there's other entities that you really do need to address as well. That would be the school board and the county. But as far as the
I'm doing
city.
them all.
I don't-
I'm doing them all.
Thank you.
And,
But-
and like they said, I had the reassessment guy, and now I'm here at this meeting talking to you. And I will be here on the 12th to talk to you. And there's other things, right?
Correct.
You know, Mrs. Fisk makes a great point. You know, if you take a look at the equalization report, and you take a look at the pie chart as to the cities at 25 and change, 25 point something or another, the school districts at 46 point and change and things like that. So, and yet, I could tell by the way that you're looking at us that you're understanding that. So we're not, you know, we're not trying to give you.
Math ain't a problem, Bert.
Yeah.
I run my own business, I get
So,
it.
but believe me,
I'm
those,
just trying to see where it's going.
that same question was addressed to our finance and administrative people last Friday by me.
Sure.
About what does that reflect on for the mill levies and to how we can either maintain a flat mill levy or how does it affect? And again, as Mrs. Fisk says, we have a lot of needs within the community, and that's where we have to bring that all together. So again, I highly encourage you to reach out to the assessing department. Mr. Nick Lee is the head of that department, and I know
I
that
had
they.
Steve over last week, so I already done that. but-
Okay, very good, very good. But, you know, that's a very important part of the process. Because we can't address it here.
I called, I did that portion, right? So,
Yep.
so now beyond that, I was just wondering about the mill levies and what the tax.
So did they, when they visited with you, was there a middle point that you came to or a change? or
Well, he's gotta go back and do
Okay,
his job, right?
and that-
Some-
and that's
Some
what
things
they-
on my house are better than he thought, and some things are worse, so it's,
Yeah. The last Friday, I checked in with them, and they had about 100 phone calls. Keeping in mind, we sent out 7,000.
About 7,800, 10% increase
1,800,
notices.
And we'd had 100 phone calls. So we respect the public and your concerns about that. And again, we want you to try and get in there this week prior to next Tuesday's meeting. Because we can extend that, is my understanding too, until we meet with the citizens that want to have a meeting. Mrs. Fish, you have something additional?
Yes, I just wanted to also remind you that when you're asking about mill levies and budgets, please kind of watch what's going on, because we'll be starting into our budget process and having those discussions and putting information out on our website. So please, I encourage people to,
city website or?
yep, and if you have questions and you don't see something, please reach out and I'll get you the information you need. Okay?
Appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Are there any other non-agenda items? Commissioner Simmons, excuse me.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the comment, because my home, a personal note, Sarah, so it's just, I'm not talking about the process. Excuse me. My home went up $50,000 as well. And I didn't honestly realize this or think about it, but I've been out of state, obviously, for a while, and I got the letter saying they'd like to come in and look at my home. Since I wasn't there, I didn't get it, and I didn't let them in. So y'all know. So when you don't do that, when you don't let them look, they're gonna assume your basement and everything's done. That's just, and I get why they do that. That's what Nick told me. So my basement is not all done. I have about 200 square feet, isn't done. Well, when I didn't let them in, I got assessed. So my point here is let them in, work with them, let them come in and look at it and assess it.
Can I still speak?
Certainly, absolutely, sir. Step to the microphone, please.
I was gonna wait till next week, but I'll do it now. I moved to your community, Bruce Salveson, 1450 Cheyenne. I moved to your community here approximately 4 years ago. And we bought a house that hadn't been touched since 1961 when it was built. We're in the process of redoing it. Nobody's ever called me to come in and look at it or anything. I paid
Mr. President, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this really feels like we're getting into the equalization
Okay,
a little
thank you.
more than just sort of a cursory overview, so I would.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Talk in general
value-
talk in general terms rather than
Okay,
specific.
your value went up 50,000. Mine went up 152,000 on a house built in 1961.
I think you need to meet with our assessors like ASAP and get that figured out.
Okay,
And then
thank
we
you.
can,
Absolutely. Please do.
just so you know, we can't do it, sir, but we will definitely be listening to you on the 12th.
Yes.
And communicating with you.
Yes, no, there's something wrong here. My wife has expensive tastes, but it's not that expensive.
She must know my wife. Is there any other non-agenda items?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Olson?
Several months ago, we brought up the topic of the public safety sales tax. And it's been digested, it's been talked about, we've got talking points all made up, but we need to, as a commission, decide whether or not we want to bring it forth on the June 14th ballot or not, because I suppose at a certain point here, it's gonna be too late to get it on the ballot because they're gonna be starting to print the ballots soon. So we're gonna have to make a decision here pretty soon, and I hope, I was wishing that Commissioner Jerdvig was here, so we could have a little discussion, but I hope we can, maybe at the next agenda.
Why would we not just put it on the agenda to vote on? We can't, I am a firm believer that I'm not voting on anything during correspondence or not, but Tita, we could put it on the next agenda, can we not?
Yes, if you as a commission tell me to put it on there, I'll have it on there and I'll have information
That
for
was
you.
my purpose.
Please put it on there.
Please put
Okay.
it on, yeah.
We need to decide.
We'll take care of it.
We need to get that to the county auditor so they can, as a ballot issue. Any other non-agenda items that any of the commissioners would like to bring forward this evening? Is there any of our department heads that would have a non-agenda item that they'd like to bring forward? All right, Commissioner Simmons,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson,
I second that motion.
we stand adjourned.
So.